Hey, welcome NASCAR fans.
Never fail.
It's time to fasten your seatbelt and rev up that engine. It's time to go on pit row. On Pit Row is your weekly look inside the world of NASCAR. Now live, here's the pit crew, Steve Ronkowitz and Charlie Turner.
Boogity, boogity, boogity. Go on Pit Row, boys.
Forgot which show I was doing. This is the On Pit Row show where we actually have sounders and some what do you call
Production
that?
value.
Effects. Yeah, there you go, some production value, because we got a professional production guy on
Who are you guys? Who are you guys? Who are you guys?
You just don't remember that one, do you?
I don't remember that one. What happened to Dan? He just disappeared. I think we scared him off with our professionals. Anyway, hopefully Dan Beaver will log back in here. I might have to reinvite him.
There's Dan right here.
Who are you guys? Who are you guys? Who are you guys?
That's Dan, if you don't remember. That is
Oh,
Dan.
that is okay. Well, let me see if I can find him again. I got to reinvite him. So anyway, welcome NASCAR fans. I'm Charlie Turner, and he's Steve Ronkowitz, and we're going to try and get hooked back up with Dan Beaver, and hopefully we'll get hooked up with Beth Ann Eisler, and who knows who else will show up today. Because we got some stuff to talk about. We're finally in the playoffs, in the NASCAR playoffs, the chase to the Sprint Cup Championship 2014. 16 drivers only. Wow, playing this.
Yeah, and explain the rules.
There's 43 of them going to show up and play, but only 16 count.
Explain those rules to me again.
You want me to? You're the rules guy. I usually just try to figure out ways to circumvent them.
All I know is that if you're too good, you have to stack 3 bodies on top of each other. That's all I know. But this one's got me befuddled. I don't understand this at all. There's so many permutations and things. Basically, you start with 16, and somewhere you end up with 4 at Homestead, and how you get there, I guess you don't really care.
Well, here's the way you get there.
Ah, he's got it written down.
No. I'm just going from memory.
Oh, you liar! You liar!
No, if you're one of these 16, and you win one of the next 3 races, you automatically advance to the next round, which I think is called the Challenger round or something like that. Or this is the Chump round, apparently. So that's one way to get into the next round.
Is this the Smythe division?
This is either the top 12 points gatherers or a winner who could be outside the top 12 points gatherers of the next 3 races. Gets to advance into the next round. And then the same thing happens. Then those 4 guys are kicked out. They're kicked to the curb. And the 12 guys, Dan is actually much better at explaining this, so hopefully Dan gets back on here. He said he's resetting his modem. So we're having tech problems. But
He probably got hit by the haboob.
The what?
There was a haboob that went through Phoenix. It's probably in...
What's a haboob? What the hell's a haboob?
You don't know a haboob?
No,
It's a sandstorm.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
In North America, it's a sandstorm?
Yeah, it's a
I could see it
haboob.
being a sandstorm in the Sahara or something, but I can't. A haboob, huh?
A sandstorm is
I
a
like,
sandstorm.
I've lived a long time, heard a lot of weather terms. There's a new weather term every year for something that I've experienced my whole life and didn't know it had some kind of goofy-ass name.
A haboob should not be confused with
I'll explain the chase points. You explain a haboob.
I thought I just did.
Try it again. I think I talked over the top of you.
No, we're done. We're done. We got issues today. Okay.
All right, so we have 16 drivers that still have a chance to win the 2014 Sprint Cup. I don't, off the top of my head, I can't tell you who they are. But any surprises in that group? I mean, to me, you got to go to Almirola's probably a surprise. AJ Allmendinger's probably a surprise. Any surprises that didn't make it?
No, I think those are probably the 2 biggest. I guess in my mind, I think it's more surprising that Allmendinger's in, or sorry, Almirola's in and Ambrose is not. I mean, you would have figured that between one of those 2 road course races, Ambrose may have had a chance to win, and then for Almirola to get a victory, that I find that a little weird. But
Well,
hey,
he Ambrose
made
did
it
have a
happen.
chance to. He had a chance to win both those races. He just didn't do it.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
if they, I'm surprised almost surprised they don't have like the driver with the most accumulated points on the road course also gets in. So next year there'll be 18 drivers. Because they'll give the driver with the most accumulated road course points will get in, and the driver who doesn't have a win, and the driver who accumulates the most restrictor plate points will win. Right? Why not?
Okay. And the one with no
Can you hear me?
penis. Yeah, I hear you. The one with no penis gets in too. The driver with the most points and no
Which
penis.
one is that? Oh, wait a minute. Well, that was a stupid question, wasn't it? Well,
Maybe there is some question. I don't know. You seem to think there is.
Apparently there was for me.
I guess
She
so.
just didn't pop into my head like. I figured you were like slamming Jeff Gordon or something.
No, let me go. Let me get my phone. I'll call Stenhouse and we'll see whether or not she qualifies for that. That's sad.
Okay.
So almost as sad as the race. I know I don't want to necessarily get into
It didn't
races.
take long for this show to devolve into disgust.
See what happens when Beaver's not here?
Yeah, he's the one who keeps us in line. I'm gonna re-invite him again, just for the heck of it. He said he was resetting his modem. I wonder if maybe the haboob did get him. Who knows? Whatever that is.
Haboob. Haboob.
Haboob?
Haboob.
I thought you said it was
Not hubbub.
Haboob.
Haboob.
Oh, okay. How do you spell that?
I believe it's probably Habob. I
That'd
think.
be habab, wouldn't it?
Well, yeah, but if you're from the Middle East, then you can call it a haboob.
Okay, I got you. Maybe it's got those two little dots above it. It'd be
And that would be German.
Haboob.
Habib.
Okay, it's time to move on to something else here.
You brought it back up, not me. Not me at all.
Well, I guess the next big story is, we've got 3 races to go before the chase gets whittled again, and when it does, we'll be eliminating 4 of the 16 who have qualified. One of our friends, Ryan Rantz, who runs a terrific fantasy racing website called ifantasyrace.com, has a game, real simple game that he's got set up for the chase. It's kind of like a bracket game, almost like a basketball bracket deal. You take the 16 drivers and you got to pick your first pick is you pick the 12 that are going to advance the first time, then you pick the 8 that are going to advance the next time, and you pick the 4 that are going to advance the next time, and then you pick the 4 in order as they're going to finish at Homestead. Interesting game. So if you're interested in playing something in a fantasy, kind of a unique fantasy game for the chase, get over to ifantasyrace.com and sign up for that. I think as long as you subscribe to Ryan's site, I believe the game is free. Or if you don't want to subscribe, I think you can pay some nominal fee. It's not very much, but it's a fun game. I put my bracket in. It'll suck, but it's in there.
So who's your surprise to not make it to round 2? Do you have a surprise, or do you think it's just going to be kind of, you figure Rola's gone, Allmendinger's gone? Is there a surprise in your mind?
Well, I do have those 2 guys out. I'm trying to remember. I think I have Greg Biffle out, and maybe Ryan Newman out. I'd have to go look. I did save it somewhere. I don't know where I put it.
I think Denny Hamlin is going to be one of the guys who doesn't make it to round 2. There's nothing. I don't know. There's nothing about him in that race team that I find special, and it seems to me you got to win races. You got to finish in the top 5 if you really expect him to do anything in this deal. And I just don't see him being able to pull those wins and those top 5s out. Joe Gibbs Racing.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was just say Joe Gibbs Racing just seems to kind of have taken on the Kyle Busch persona that something's going to go bad and it's going to go wrong, and once we get to the playoffs, we're all going to suck. And I just get that feeling from the whole shebang.
Yeah, I kind of looked for Matt Kenseth to start getting on some kind of consistency role starting at Richmond, and he didn't. I mean, he screwed up and end up 60 laps down or something like that. And that doesn't bode well for that team. One of the interesting, I really hope Dan gets hooked back up because he had scrounged up some interesting stats about this chase thing. And there's a stat out there that no matter how this goes in the chase, at least 64-point-something% of the drivers who advance in the chase will advance strictly on points, not in wins. So it's still heavily weighted towards consistency to advance into this final thing. There is a potential for 35% or so of the advancements to be strictly on wins. That would only be probably if a different driver wins every race, leading to the last race. So I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how it plays out. It's different.
Well, with the old chase, it was guys who got on a roll were guys who were winning races.
Then they had to win races. Yeah, I agree with you. It was always my opinion in the original chase format that a driver had to win probably 3 races, 3 of those last 10, to be the Cup champion. And Jimmy Johnson pretty much did it every time. The only one that came really, really, really close to doing it without winning a race at all was Carl Edwards. What was it, 3 years ago when he and Stewart actually tied in points.
Right. Yeah.
But Stewart had wins, and Edwards did not. So,
Speaking of Stewart, do you feel a big sigh of relief that he didn't win the race? So NASCAR kind of got themselves off the hook? Or not so much?
I think it's a good thing that he didn't win the race, personally. I think that it's kind of good for him. I don't want to speak for him. I don't know what's good for him. But it seems to me like it would be good for him and for that team to not have to deal with that. Now they can just run the last 10 races, kind of let whatever legal and personal ramifications have to yet wring themselves out of this situation. I would think 3 months would be long enough for that to happen. Hey, then we're joined by somebody. We were trying to figure out whether I just broke the whole system because Dan's gone, but now Beth's here, so at least we got hooked up with her. Hey, Beth, what's going on?
Not much.
So did you watch that Richmond race? Was that like the most compelling race you've ever seen since you were at Du Quoin? I'm telling you, this is a Google thing today.
She may be having some issues.
Yeah, mine keeps going kind of in and out too a little bit, but we'll see. We'll just get through it as best we can. And maybe the haboob has hit Toledo Hall too.
It may be the haboob or the pending thunderstorm that's rolling its way towards northwest Ohio.
Is there one on the way?
There is. So we may be going through that to get to Google so that we can send it up on the world, but I don't know. It may just be us.
Well,
just like the old days.
Who would you eliminate? Sounds like you'd eliminate Denny Hamlin. Who else would you eliminate from this? Moving to the Super 12 or whatever they're going to call them.
Yeah. Well, Hamlin's the guy that I think is kind of unusual, but I go again with Allmendinger. I go with Eric Almirola. I just don't see it, going to come to fruition for those guys. They're just not consistent enough. And I agree with you on Biffle from the standpoint that Roush is just a mess.
They're just floundering.
Yeah, and for them to be able to put together any kind of wins or any kind of consistency, don't see it happening. So, I would say those are my 4 with Denny Hamlin being the wild card guy, just because I don't, I just don't see that group making it.
Not seeing it, yeah. I think maybe their best chance to make it would be to win one of those races, and Dover being the best chance for him to win. Although he's strong at Dover and at New Hampshire in the past. So if they can resurrect any of their former mojo, I would think he's got a shot at certainly at New Hampshire. But we'll see.
Well, the other, we talked about it so much. When you look at 60% of the races are on 1.5 mile racetracks.
Right.
So you got the only guy that's won more than once on 1.5 miles is Keselowski. So the numbers would say, I would think, that if you're going to look at somebody who has the best opportunity, would be Keselowski. But
well, I do remember my Final Four, and I have both the Penske drivers, Jimmy Johnson, and I've got Carl Edwards in there. I just got a hunch about Edwards. Like there's a chip on his shoulder, and he has performed well and consistently in these 10 racetracks in the past. So I'm giving Carlo that's a big leap of faith. To think of my Final Four, he's the least likely one to make it, but he would be my wild card pick for the Final Four.
Well, it makes you wonder what would go through Jack Roush's head going into this chase. Roush wants to win championships, but to give a championship to another one of your lame duck drivers almost seems counter Jack Roush in a way to me. I mean, as competitive as he is, it's almost like you're winning a championship and then sending that championship off to your competitor.
Yeah.
Because he goes to as he goes to Joe Gibbs Racing, there he is. He is the champion, and he is defending his championship someplace else. And you just wonder if he's going to get all the good stuff at that point.
Well, I would think he probably is not, if there were any sign at all that Biffle could do anything. But I don't see it. I mean, would you push all your chips in on Greg Biffle if you're Jack Roush? If you don't think he can, you don't think he has a chance? Because it doesn't look to me like he's got a chance. I don't know.
Yeah, I think that might be the one.
Racetracks. I mean, if he does well this week, maybe that changes things. But
maybe that's one of the things about this new playoff format is that everybody really does have a chance, and you don't know who's going to stumble. And
right.
I go back to a year ago when we had Darrell Waltrip on the show, and he said there's no need for an elimination round because all these guys eliminate themselves anyhow. So who
two finals were going to be, he said at the beginning of the year, which I don't know about that, but
yeah, I don't know about that either, but I think that if you look at it, how much different is the chase now than it was before, other than the fact that I guess if you don't make that first cut, you are definitely out of it and you have no chance for redemption, whereas at least before, if you had a couple of bad races, within the first 2 or 3 races, you could still find a way back if you were prolific enough. Now that's not going to be an issue.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting. Who would you have for your Final Four? That was the question I put out, by the way, on Facebook this week for our Fast Lap question to try to generate some comments for our Shell gift card giveaway every week. Who would your Final Four be? You want to do your Shell read first?
Well, we can do that. I mean, you can submit your Shell Saver Card comment of the day, take home a $50 Shell gift card. And, of course, anytime Joey Logano, driver of that 22 Shell Pennzoil Ford Fusion, wins a 2014 points race, Shell Saver Card holders save 22 cents per gallon on any grade of Shell nitrogen-rich gasoline or Shell diesel just by using that Shell Saver Card on the Wednesday after the race. Valid up to 25 gallons. Go to shell.us/Wednesday for details. Win $50 from us, people. Give us some interesting stuff, and that's what will get you your $50 Shell Saver Card. I think that you have to go with Keselowski. I really think the Junior will be there. Jimmy Johnson will be there. And the fourth one I find a little more difficult. Probably going to be Kyle Busch.
Wow.
So I guess that would be my fourth.
Where are you seeing the Kyle Busch get through? I mean, I would like to see him there because I think he would make the final race much more interesting if he's one of the 4 that could win it. But man, I don't see it from that team at all this year.
Well, I've
picked them a lot for wins, and I just.
Oh yeah. I know they self-destruct. I mean,
they sure do.
There's no doubt, but I just have a feeling that there's going to be a Kyle Busch sighting in the last couple of races. So it's a feeling. It's my gut hunch.
Going back to my top 4 picks, I'm sure I had Junior in the top 4 too, because I just think NASCAR will make sure that he's in the top 4. So I don't know maybe I did leave Edwards out. I don't know. Whatever. I know I've got Johnson, and I know I've got both the Penske cars in there. So it must have been those guys and Junior.
Well, it's pretty tough to vote against Jimmy Johnson, no matter how many problems he has, leading up to the chase. We've seen this movie many, many times.
Yeah.
I think I've got the T-shirt. I bought the souvenir mug. once he gets into the chase, everything changes, and they just know how to win a championship. And this isn't any different. It may be different in the way you get there, but the ultimate result is the same.
And they have really, really good notes.
Yeah.
For this. Here's the one that I think could really twist this thing up. In the second group of races, I believe it would be, I don't know where it comes in the order, but it might be the 6th race of the chase, is Talladega. And man, you could, if you're one of those 12 guys and you're in good shape on points in the other 2 races, but not at Talladega, and you blow it at Talladega, get taken out in a big one or something, we're not going to know what's going to happen with this thing until after Talladega. I guess that's my point. That race is going to shake it up.
What do you think it's going to do to that race? You think guys are going to run more cautiously, depending on where they're at in the chase run at that point? I think you almost have to look at guys.
I can't figure it out. Will if they do that, then will one of these guys that, their only real legitimate chance to win a Sprint Cup race is at a restrictor plate track, will they get stupid crazy and cause more big wrecks than normal? I mean, will somebody like I'm not saying that David Gilliland is a crazy driver, because he's not. He's great, but he's really good on plate tracks. Will he push a little bit more? Will he and David Reagan try to do something and cause a big wreck? I mean, that's possible. They ran in huge packs there in the first race at Talladega this year, so I don't know.
Well, you got to believe that whatever is going to happen at Talladega is going to happen. I mean, but the one thing that we did see was in history, not necessarily this year, but we've seen it before, guys just going to the back of the pack and hoping that everything that breaks loose far enough ahead of them that they can avoid it. And they'll run at the back of the pack until the last 20 laps and then see what happens. But, will NASCAR allow that to happen?
Well, how slow can you run? I mean, if everybody wants to run at the back, that just moves the pack back.
Right.
I don't know what's going to happen. I think that'll be probably the first really big. There's Beth trying to get. Hey Beth, if you can hear us, and if we can hear you, who are your 4 picks to be the final 4 in the chase? Nah, we've still got internet problems. I think that storm might be coming, Steve. We'll get everybody's opinions and put them up on the website this week so we can shake that all out. But I don't know. I think this chase, I like what they did to get to this point. I think when I first heard they were going to have 16 qualifiers for the chase, I'm like, geez, let's just let everybody in,
Mm-hmm.
But 16 is a pretty good number, as it turns out. I don't think there's any chumps in this 16. And there's some good drivers who didn't make it. So I guess, the field's maybe deeper than I gave it credit for at the beginning of the season. But what goes forward from here, it was a pretty natural process to get to this final 16. It was points, and they get a little extra for a win and that kind of stuff. But for the process going forward, breaking it up into the 4 segments, it's like a Saturday night qualifying race.
I'm not. Yeah. Again, I'm not all that crazy about it, but it's going to be what it's going to be, and I don't know that you're generally going to have a huge amount of surprises of guys that get eliminated, and you say, "Oh, I just can't believe that he's eliminated in the first round," or "I can't believe he's eliminated in the second round." I don't look at it as going to be that shocking.
And that's really the way it was up till now. We always thought when Chase first came around that it was going to, we were going to bastardize the thing, but it always came down to the 2 or 3 best drivers were the ones that were still in it, if there was more than one in it at the end of the thing. I think this could change that up a little bit because of the win and you're in kind of thing, but we'll see.
Yeah, it's going to give it a little different look. There's no doubt about that.
Because you could win this week at Chicago, and then finish 43rd in the next 2 races, and you're in the next round. And then you could win at Dover, or not Dover, win at Martinsville, and then wreck out the other 2 races, and you're in the next round. That could not have happened before.
Right, exactly. So, I mean, if you are really looking for wins to be as important as NASCAR is saying wins need to be, I mean, it continues it throughout the rest of the year, and that's exactly what you get here in the chase.
All right, we've got both of our other attendees are showing up here. Can you guys both hear me? Beth, can you hear us? Maybe.
I can hear you.
Dan can hear us. All right. Well, we'll see if Beth, can you hear us?
Yes, I can now.
Okay, cool. What we're trying to do is we need who are your 4 picks to make it to the final race?
Make it to the final race?
Yep. Who are your four finalists?
Jimmy Johnson, Harvick, Gordon, and I'm going to say Logano.
All right. How about you, Dan?
I got me the same in order: Gordon, Logano, Johnson, Kenseth. Kenseth gets there based on points.
And Steve, who did you have again?
I had Keselowski, Jr., Jimmy Johnson, and Kyle Busch.
Yeah, I had both of the Penske drivers, Dale Earnhardt Jr. and Jimmy Johnson. So we're all we've got some differences there. We'll see how it shakes out. Dan, I was trying to explain to Steve, and Beth wasn't on at the time, those stats you had found about how the advancers in this thing are going to be, majority are still going to be based on points. You want to explain you can do a better job of explaining it than I did, I'm sure.
Well, I think the points are going to be much more important than wins in the next 10 races. Wins gives you the opportunity to overcome something bad that happens to you. But points is what's going to be primary. 63% of the drivers who advance from one round to the next are going to be based on points. You've got 9 out of 12 drivers advancing from the challenger to the contender round, 5 out of 8 drivers advancing from the contender to the eliminator round, and then at least 1 driver advancing into the final round. So by my reckoning, that's 63% of the drivers are going to advance based on points of some sort. What wins are going to do for you is, if you and it could be a lot more. If someone wins 2 races, or if any of the non-chasers win a race, then that number goes up exponentially. So what it does for you is nobody's out of it, but I think that a driver like Matt Kenseth or even Ryan Newman, who already has had the points race up to this point of the season, has a good good chance to make it further down the road, and that's why I put Matt Kenseth in the final 4.
Who are you eliminating from? Who are you eliminating in the first batch?
I think you can eliminate those drivers who got there on the wild card races only. So you can drop off Denny Hamlin, you can drop off AJ Allmendinger and Eric Almirola, because each of them haven't had particularly good seasons overall, but they got their berth by winning either on the restrictor plate or the road course. And those skills are not going to help them all that much heading into these final 10 races. Maybe. I don't think Hamlin will make it to Talladega. And just winning earlier at Talladega is no predictor of how you're going to finish in this year's race, or this week, the fall's race.
Okay, you gave me 3. Who's your other one that make it?
Who is it? Biffle.
Man, you and Steve have exactly the same guys.
Okay.
That's interesting. You guys are smarter than me. Beth, who would you eliminate? Who's your first 4 to drop?
Allmendinger, Almirola. I'm going to say Newman and Kane.
Okay. No love for Casey Kane, huh?
Yeah. Well, I didn't like his post-interview last week. He didn't sound very positive.
Well, he sure did not. He really did not sound like he had a lot of faith in his team, did he? Okay, so we've got
Kyle Busch.
He has Kyle Busch in his final 4, and man, I think that would be the coolest thing to have happen. I think I'd love to see him have a chance at it in that last race, because I think that could be real interesting. But man, I don't know how he's going to get there.
Yeah, Kyle Busch was about the lowest energy I have seen ever when he didn't just crash in a race. He didn't do all that badly, but man, he looked depressed. I don't want to get be a pocket psychologist here, but he did not look like he was mentally ready to cope with the stress of a 10-race chase.
Well, maybe he had a bad day with his radio control cars or something.
Could be.
Well, it will be interesting to watch. NASCAR has stirred it up this time for sure, and I'm not sure yet if I like it. They didn't ask me, so it doesn't matter. But it hasn't. How much? It's about time for us to start talking about fantasy for Chicago, because there's still fantasy games going on right then. They didn't really change because of this chase thing. I did mention our friend Ryan Rance's fantasy game for the chase, by the way. And if you want to join that, again, I believe there's a way that you can play for free. If not, you can pay a little bit and play if you don't want to give them your email address or something. But it'll be a fun game to play, and there's $100 on the line if you win. So it's got a chance to do something, and it's pretty simple. Just got to make some picks. So go to ifantasyrace.com and play that. So Dan, let's talk about fantasy for Chicago. Does this chase thing change it at all?
This year, no. By the time we get around next year, we may know a little bit more about the chase, and it may change it when we get there. But for right now, I think in absence of any other information, you treat Chicagoland the same as you would any other similarly configured mile-and-a-half track. It's just a continuation of what's going on. Everything resets in a sense. This is the first race of the season. Only it's not Daytona and it's not a wild card race. So you've got everybody with this untapped, unlimited potential, and that could impact how they race. Steve's point that the win still matters is true. You get somebody that wins the Chicagoland race, and they can take off the next two races. So the pressure is there to win early in each of these rounds. But at Chicagoland, desire, or on any of the similarly configured mile-and-a-half tracks, desire is not enough. You have to have the total package. You've got to have driver skill. You've got to have a great set of setup notes, and you've got to have an engine that'll get you around without blowing up. So I think it's probably one of the best races that they could kick off the chase with. I would prefer that they spread out those similarly configured races a little bit more and maybe end on one of them. If they're going to have four in the chase, they should be in the four segments. Right now, they've got Chicagoland in the first one. They've got Charlotte and Kansas in the second one, and Texas in the third round. They could move either Kansas or Texas into that final place, or Kansas or Charlotte into that final place, and then have one in each round. So when you're looking at this, I think you got to look at those drivers. Chicagoland, you look at the drivers who do well on this track type. Currently, Matt Kenseth is the only driver who has swept the top 10 on similarly configured tracks, mile-and-a-half tracks. So I think that puts Johnson or Kenseth near the top. And Johnson has an almost perfect record going back to last year's Chicagoland race. He had a bad run at Texas, I believe, while they were still experimenting with tire pressures. But other than that, he's been perfect in regard to top 10s going back to that race. So those are the two guys that I've got ranked number one in Group A. Harvick, if he stays out of trouble, can be a great dark horse. Down in Group B, you've got that same cast of characters with Keselowski and Logano. But you got to get careful at this stage of the race or stage of the season, because you can't exhaust Keselowski before Homestead. You need Keselowski sitting on your roster because he's done so well on the mile-and-a-half tracks in terms of qualifying. I think in his last, I don't have the numbers right in front of me, but in his last 7 or 8 similarly configured mile-and-a-half tracks, he's either started first or second all but one time, and third in the one race that he didn't start in first or second. So he's getting you bonus points for qualification. You can't exhaust him. You got to keep him. You got to keep him sitting there, and then use him either at Texas or Homestead. At that point, you're in the final throes of the season. You might as well use them up. Ryan Newman has been remarkably consistent on the cookie cutter tracks this year, so he fits in there someplace for one of those slots. He's probably not going to challenge for the win, but he's probably going to get you a top 10 or just outside the top 10. and consistency is just as important as raw power. Carl Edwards fits in that same category. I wish they'd shown more strength at places like Michigan earlier and Richmond last week, but on the mile-and-a-half tracks, his worst finish is a 17th this year, and every other finish has been a top 15. 4 of the 6 have been top 10s, top 6s, actually. So he's a good bet to score you quite a few points if he practices well. If he doesn't, then move him off and get one of those other guys activated and get one of your other guys as a starter and put him on the bench. Down in Group B or C, then hopefully you've saved allocations for Larson and Dillon, because that's who's going to run the table for the rest of the year. You might think of Allgaier when you get to the short flat tracks, the drivers' courses. You might think of Patrick when you get to Talladega. But for the most part, if you've saved allocations, run the table with Larson and Dillon. And on the high torque speedways, Larson is probably still going to outperform Dillon, but Dillon's going to finish close enough that you're probably willing to give up a few points in order to save Larson for the drivers' tracks.
Is there anybody else down there you'd pick besides those two guys for this racetrack?
I think we've got Ryan Blaney in one race before the end of the season. He's going to be in a third Penske car whenever that happens. I'm not sure which race it is. You'll probably make a good pick then to extend your allocations. On the plate track, it's...
who cares, right? Pick Danica and go with it.
Right. So you've got at least 2 of the final 10 races where you've got something that... and Ty Dillon's going to be in the 33 car one more time at least. So you've got at least 3 drivers that you can extend the allocations for without taking a risk on Allgaier. I took a risk on him last week and it just didn't work for me. That kind of sours me. I think it sours most players when you take a risk on someone and it just doesn't work. So Allgaier has been good, but it's going to be at a Martinsville. It's going to be at Phoenix that he runs well. So if you have to have someone other than Larson and Dillon, those are where you're going to think about him this week. And on the other mile-and-a-half tracks, not even worth thinking about.
All right, so we got to now. Comes the moment of truth when we have to make our picks every week. So we got to pick one to win. Should I wake Steve up to do that?
I'm not sleeping. I'm here, absorbing it all.
I'll go first because there's no drama here for me as far as I'm concerned. I'm picking Jimmy Johnson, and if I can pick him every week, I probably will, except for Talladega maybe. I still think he's going to get his 7th championship this year. So I'm going with Jimmy Johnson this week. Beth, who you got?
I'm picking Joey Logano.
Joey Logano. Good pick at Chicago, I think. Dan?
I'm gonna take a flyer on Harvick.
Kevin Harvick. I don't think that's much of a flyer. He's been awfully good every place they've been fast this year. That's Steve. That gives you cleanup. You're the cleanup here today. Who do you like?
I'm taking the blue and/or white deuce.
There'll probably be that red car now this week. Whatever they ran.
That could be
what
too.
was that? They ran something else.
Apple, what is
Apple
that?
Ale.
Ale, yeah, that's
yeah,
it.
Red's Apple Ale. I was like, what the hell is that car?
Yep.
Okay, so anyway.
Well, we can't get beyond this without pointing out how badly we all did last week.
Well, we could if you hadn't brought it up, but go ahead.
Yeah, we tried to get out of here, Dan.
How did we do, Dan?
Charlie had the best with Stewart, Steve Zambros, Mike Henseth, and Betts Edwards. We did not do very well last week.
Well, we'll save that. We'll save that little soundbite where Charlie was best. We'll save that and use that multiple times for the rest of the history of the show. Okay, that's it for this week. We're going to call it. We'll be back next week to talk about the results at Chicago, the first chase race. See if anybody, somebody automatically qualifies to move on, right? So we'll have a winner that goes into the next round for sure, and we'll see who may have gotten themselves in trouble.
Not necessarily. We could get a non-chaser winning.
Well, that's true. Yeah, I didn't think about that. Wow, you just messed up my whole plan. I look like I was smart for me.
It's Cole Witt week.
Cole Witt week. There you go. There's Steve's changed his pick to Cole Witt.
There you go.
Okay, he is Steve Rockers. Follow Steve on Twitter at Bench Racing, at Bench Racing. You follow Beth Ann at My Metro Toledo. And Dan, of course, is at Fantasy Race. I'm at On Pit Row. We'll be back next week to talk about everything that happens in Chicago and look forward to where we go. We go to New Hampshire next, right?
New Hampshire, then Dover.
New Hampshire. Beth Ann and I will be in Chicago this weekend, too, so we'll bring you some firsthand, some great pictures from there, and I'll try and stay out of everybody's way. So thanks, everybody, for joining us. This has been your live weekly NASCAR Hangout on Pit Row.
You've just been on Pit Row, and now you're up to speed with the best information about the world of NASCAR. Come back next week and join the pit crew, Steve and Charlie, and go on Pit Row. On Pit Row is a presentation of Bench Racing Productions.
Hey, this is Jeff Hammond from NASCAR on Fox and Speed, and all the cool people hang on Pit Row.
This is On Pit Row.